In the previous video, I built the cockpit section including the pilot, and in this video I'll remove ejector pin marks, point at interesting features using a pair of tweezers, and paint an internal area that won't be seen. All so that I can build an accurate version of the most famous airplane of World War I as flown by Manfred von Richthofen. So let's get on with it.
Get on with it! Yes! Get on with it!
Right, well, the first step is to check the fitment of the two fuselage halves. So my reference book says to look out for misalignment due to poor placement of the moulded pins. In dry fitting these, it's a little obvious that there's an issue with the fitment. So turning over to look at the top seam, and it's worse. Oh dear. So you can see here that the left side sits much higher than the right. So I'm going to cut away the pesky pins as advised in my reference book. Now if you're accident prone, look away now. This is not how you should use a hobby knife. Okay, so now I have control over the mating of these surfaces and can flex them into the correct position. Much better. These ejector pin marks on both halves also need to be removed as they interfere with the cockpit alignment and placement. So here we go, more work for my hobby knife. We can sand away the remaining amount. I'm going to use my favourite tool to do that. It's not a sanding sponge, but my fiberglass pen. Truthfully, this isn't the best task for it, as its sanding sponges are all that's required for a job like this. But hey, it's great for fine sanding, removing CA glue residue, etc., so why not show it off? Here on the underside of the fuselage are the points where Meng removed the integrated grab handles as designed by Wingnut Wings. What were they thinking? I mean, seriously. They did, however, include internal holes as guidance to drill the actual holes into position for the grab handles. So why they did any of this, quite frankly, is anyone's guess. And it leaves me with an area now that I have to sand smooth and then drill new holes into it later on when I want to fit the grab handles. Honestly, it's a whole lot of work for nothing, so I'm not sure what you were thinking here, Meng. Okay, a light rub with the fiberglass pen again will complete this job. Did I mention how much I like this fiberglass pen? A nice inclusion is moulded in placements for the two versions of the cable pass-throughs. So in this kit you can build both the F1 pre-production model or the DR1 production version. Great forethought here from Wingnut Wings and Meng to include these little spots. The final step to complete the cockpit now is to spray the dope linen colour and to fit the 3D plywood decals. So here I'm using Mission Models Eifenbein White, which is a little strong in yellow tone to be honest, but I'm going to use it because it should make this colour visible once I've closed out the cockpit. And that's mostly because I have a pilot figure who is hiding a lot of the internal details. Having a colour that's a little stronger than what I should be using will make that stand out. So to ensure the 3D decals stay stuck to the walls of the cockpit, I'm using some Tamiya decal adhesive. And normally this would be too hot to use on a Mission Models painted surface, but look, I'm going to be a little bit sneaky here and actually make it work. These decals are quite thick, so they need to be pushed down onto the surface with a little force to make them comply. If you find decals like these don't want to comply, well, I'd suggest using some CA glue to put them in their place. Okay, moving forward, let's tackle the firewall. After basing it with Mr. Metal Colour Aluminium, I use a lead pencil to add the feathered look to the panel. Now you can do this several ways. You could hand brush or spray on a chrome paint through a stencil, but this will do the purpose that I'm going to need. The engine and weathering will hide a lot of this. Here's a neat little trick. When joining two parts of fine detail and you're left with a tiny little flash seam, using Tamiya extra thin cement will melt away the seam line. So why try to file or sand a seam like this? This easy tip really will save you hours of frustration. Okay, let's look at what we're building next. The engine. After painting all the surfaces in the correct metallic paints, I then buff them all to a reasonably high shine before weathering them. On the fins of the engine cylinders, I then add Tamiya black panel liner, and it's an enamel product and is quite at home with Mr. Metal Colour metallic paints. I also wash the black panel liner over the cylinder heads to add shadows and oily dust effects. These will actually be enhanced later on with oil paints. After joining the push rods and intake section to the cylinder blocks, I'm now adding the ignition leads using lead wire. They'll be difficult to see once the model is completed, but they do add an extra touch of accuracy for those willing to look closely enough for them. VMS Flexi 5K CA glue is great for this process. I then add another touch of detail by painting the white porcelain of the spark plugs. The final step for now is to speckle on some 502 Abteilung Industrial Earth oil paint, which is going to replicate some of the splattered castor oil over the surfaces here. Time to add the cockpit and pilot and close up the fuselage. But before I do that, I need to set up the method that I'm going to be using to make this an in-flight model. And the key part required here is 2 rare earth magnets. Now I'm going to set these in place using CA glue. In the past I may have used a silicon-based glue like E6000, but that glue can actually react adversely with styrene plastic, particularly thin styrene plastic. So CA is a much safer alternative. A word of caution, rare earth magnets are strong, that's why I'm using them. They love to show off their attraction skills if you let them get too close to each other. So let's try that again. I'm placing some sprue offcuts between the magnets to strengthen the sidewall. All will be revealed with this process in a later video. Now I can close up this top seam. I weld the panels together using Tamiya extra thin glue. I prefer to use this glue as it literally melts the two surfaces together. CA on the other hand bonds them, which is actually a weaker bond than using Tamiya extra thin. So not my choice to use here when I want this surface to stay melted together. I was going to say bonded, but melted's probably the right term. Last step here is to wrap some tape over the top and hold that in place and leave it overnight. Next day, here's the result. Okay, this will need sanding and filling with CA glue, probably twice, and then finally I'll use a thin coat of primer and then sand that back for a smooth seam. So time to add some details like strengthening patches around the flight cable openings. So these 3D decals are great, but in the end I did use some CA glue to permanently bond these in place. I'm modifying the tail's horizontal stabiliser as this plane will be an in-flight model. And to do that, I need to score the joint so I can pivot the stabiliser to the desired position that I want it to be in. And the key here is to use a sharp knife and work very slowly. Okay, let's glue the firewall into place now. The fit here is firm, but not too tight that I would end up twisting the fuselage out of plumb. These parts are well engineered and really they're a pleasure to work with for the most part. So far, building this kit has been an exercise in rediscovering techniques I have long abandoned. Working with a model kit that is so well engineered has been an absolute pleasure. The research has allowed me to learn so much about this aircraft, and I'm genuinely excited about the next steps where we're going to start to add paint to the exterior of this aircraft, and then build all the cool stuff like machine guns and the wings. Hopefully you'll join me in the next video where I'll be testing theories on what colours actually lay beneath the famous red top coat of this magnificent World War I fighter. And don't forget that while you're building your models, check out the guys at the On The Bench podcast. I have to say, I'm lucky enough to be able to call the OTB team, that's Dave, Ian and Julian, friends. After so many years listening to their excellent podcast, and really it is a podcast made by scale modelers for scale modelers, and it's all about scale modeling. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch my videos and has helped grow the channel this year. And if you haven't subscribed already, hey, what's stopping you? Just hit that subscribe button and help me reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Thank you so much and see you again very soon.